You put in the work, you meditate, you heal old traumas, and you experience massive personal breakthroughs. And then, despite all that momentum, you inevitably regress right back into the same limiting patterns. It feels like hitting an invisible wall. When this happens, the immediate instinct is to blame yourself. We assume we lacked the discipline, or we weren't sincere enough, or our spiritual readiness just wasn't there. But the evidence points to something completely different. Look at this model. When you take a highly advanced modern software application and force it to run on an outdated, rigid structural grid, it immediately crashes. The problem exists in the structural incompatibility between the new input and the operating system beneath it. This legacy code forms our foundational layer. It is an architectural system built entirely on the instructions of survival, separation, and fear. Now watch what happens to that grid when the hardware environment shifts. The energetic field of reality itself is currently accelerating to a much higher frequency, and you can see the stress literally fracturing those old, rigid modules. In this new, accelerated environment, the feedback loops are incredibly tight. Reality now mirrors our internal states almost immediately. The lag time between what you hold in your consciousness and what materializes around you is vanishing. Running fear-based code inside a high-frequency environment causes the entire system to buckle. This mechanical failure is why the inherited structures of our civilization are losing their coherence right now. The original survival code functioned as a perfectly adapted architecture for the early, high-risk stages of human development. It kept the species alive when physical danger was the primary driver of evolution, but you cannot brute force your way out of its limitations. Applying more effort, discipline, or sheer willpower to solve a spiritual crisis fails because the very mechanism of forcing an outcome is an expression of that same survival-based code. Humanity is currently experiencing an architectural evolution. The deepest foundational structure from which we organize our consciousness is being called to reorganize itself from the ground up. This diagram shows exactly what is required to cross this threshold. On the left, a foundation heavily patched and reinforced still fails under stress. Reaching the next stage of development requires the approach on the right, the complete replacement of our base reality platform with a new structural foundation. It is structurally impossible to build a stable, coherent reality on top of a foundation designed for survival. A new field requires a new blueprint. The solution to this systemic collapse is TELOS, the Enlightened Living Operating System. TELOS functions as a precise, completed blueprint, received as a direct structural transmission from an external source beyond the human mind. This structural template is a direct transmission from source, channeled downward into human awareness through a high-order intelligence known as the throne energies. Here is how that upgrade functions mechanically. This array illustrates the 7 specific components of TELOS, incorporating features like coherence, sovereignty, and embodied divinity. They lock symmetrically together to form a highly stable, newly upgraded base. Once the pieces are in place, the installation happens chronologically. As the model flattens, you can trace the 7 distinct stages of the process. It starts at the very bottom with a complete purge of the old system, moving upwards step by step until it reaches the final stage, the active creation of new realities. Each of these components acts as the precise, mechanical counterpart to the distortions of the old world. High-level spiritual ideals stop being abstract goals and become literal, installable operating conditions. The ultimate result of this installation is that the human being achieves structural compatibility with the high-frequency field of reality. This illustrates exactly how compatibility works, just like a radio receiver tuning to a specific frequency. When internal architecture matches the broadcast wave, you get a seamless, unbroken lock with a signal that's always been broadcasting. With this upgraded hardware successfully locked in, human consciousness can process high-frequency reality inputs without burning out or collapsing back into old survival habits. All those applications that used to fail, your spiritual practices, your relational healing, your creative endeavors, now perform flawlessly and sustainably because they are finally resting on the correct platform. This architectural upgrade fulfills the original, intended design of the human system, activating the biological and energetic pathways exactly as they were engineered to function. Surviving and thriving in this new field requires a shift in focus. We must move past the attempt to repair individual applications and begin the work